going into outer space, you need those sorts of precautions. That's the nature of the physics of the realm of outer space. But inner space is the self. There's nothing in the depth and the truth of the self. There's nothing about the soul, spirit, source, divinity that would have negative ramifications or negative implications. What happens, and the reason that different spiritual experiences seem to be different in different people, and some are these very exquisite openings, and we're able to let go of falsehood and really step into truth, where sometimes you see people who become really disoriented, really unable to function, and it's not very good PR for a spiritual practice. That has actually nothing to do with the energy itself or the truth itself, and everything to do with the container in which it's happening. So for example, if I have not done work on my container, you can give me all of this extraordinary energy, and my container is not going to know what to do with it. Now, if I am fully surrendered, and in an environment in which I'm being supported in my surrender, whether through a spiritual community, whether through a guru, whether through whatever it may be, then I can literally let myself shatter. That's the metaphoric shattering of the ego, in which I don't know what's going on, but that's okay, because I allow myself to just shatter. The dilemma arises when I have a container that I have not really worked on yet. And by container, I mean my emotional, psychic, mental, psychological self, the psyche, this self who interprets experience, the self who tells me who I am. If I haven't done work on that container, and I'm not in a place where I feel safe to just shatter, then what you end up happening is trying to somehow maintain an ego self of like who I think I am and how I'm used to moving through the world, and it no longer works. It's like, if you put on those virtual reality glasses, or when I was a kid, we had these kind of cheap 3D glasses that you could put on. And if you looked at a 3D book, it looked really neat. But if you tried to look at the normal world through it, it was really disorienting, and it kind of messed with your depth of field. It certainly messed with your color perception. And so you no longer were able to walk through the world as easily as you would be without them. If I've had this infusion of spiritual experience and spiritual energy and truth, but I have not done the work to understand that, to contain that, to work with that, to surrender into that, I'm going to keep trying to move through the world in my old way, but it's not going to work. And this is where you get disorientation. I remember on a personal level, when I had been in India maybe a month, this is going back now 27 plus years, so I had been here about a month, and I had had all of these extraordinary spiritual experiences. Those of you who know my story know that I had come in at 25 and had been an academic, a scientist. I was not a spiritual person. I was not a religious person and had these incredible experiences of the presence of the divine, of awakening, of transformation on the banks of Mother Ganga. And so I was in this very, very expansive, ecstatic place. But by God's grace, number one, I had done a lot of work on my container. Even though I was not a spiritual person, I had done a lot of psychological work on myself and my identity and my truth and my fears, and sort of, I felt very comfortable, dropping into the truth of me, whatever that might be. And I had done a lot of work around seeing the self and going into the self. And because of the power of the experiences, I had so much faith in the universe. It was this sudden experience of, oh my God, the universe is divine. I am not separate from it. It is such a safe, amazing, oh my God, beautiful place. So I had an incredible amount of faith. But I'll tell you a story about this and the container, which was, I had been here about a month, and we had a group who had come in from America who wanted to learn Reiki. And so Swamiji had called in this Reiki master from Delhi who had come to teach them Reiki. And I was hanging out mostly with this group because they were the only people who spoke English. And they said, oh, you should come to our Reiki. Now, I didn't even know what Reiki was. I had never heard of Reiki. But everything was an adventure, so why not? So I said, sure. So I go with them, and the Reiki master was doing level 1 Reiki initiations, in which he had everyone just sit in chairs. And it took 2-3 minutes, it seemed, really. I mean, you closed your eyes, and he didn't even touch you. And so after he did whatever he did for 2 or 3 minutes that he had said was the level 1 initiation, he said to me, your chakras are really open. And I had never heard the word chakras. I had no idea what that meant. But he said, your chakras are really open, and I feel like you're ready for the level 2 initiation also, if you'd like it. So I was like, sure, whatever. Level 1 took 2 or 3 minutes. I didn't feel anything. I'm sitting in this chair. Why not? So the level 2 one kind of knocked me a little bit energetically, as in it took me a long time to sort of come back into my body in the chair. I then stood up from the chair and I came into Puja Swamiji's garden where he was giving darshan and meeting people. And he was sitting on the grass, and he had a group of maybe 15 or 20 people sitting in front of him. And I went and I joined that group of 15, 20 people, sitting in the back of them, just sitting, having his darshan, just being there in the garden. And when they were ready to leave, and at one point, while he's talking to them, at just one point for a split second, he looks at me, his eyes catch mine just for this long. And then he moves his eyes back and he's talking to the group. But in that split second, he saw something. Because when the group stands to leave, I also stand, we bow, they walk out the door, and I'm just about to follow them out the door. And he gives me a signal and he says, stay back. And he walks me inside into an area I had never been, and he opens a door into what was basically a tiny little storeroom. I had a nice kind of Persian rug on the floor and a bunch of bookshelves of books and gifts he had been given that were waiting to be re-gifted, and the, ever flow of recycling of things, because he doesn't actually take anything he's given. So whatever comes in just gets there waiting to be re-gifted. And he says, lie down. So I lie down on the rug, and he walks out, shuts the door, locks the door, turns off the light, locks the door, and leaves me in this tiny little dark room in which I had this extraordinary experience of this complete spiritual expansion of just my, bursting through my body, bursting through the bookshelves, bursting through the room. I mean, it was just expansive and ecstatic and amazing. But here's the point why I mention it. It was very safe. I was in a place that I trusted, locked up in a room. Nobody was going to disturb me. Nobody was going to make me have a normal conversation. Nothing was expected of me. I didn't need to navigate my world in any way. And he came back in after some time, I have no idea how long it was, and said, "How are you?" And I don't know what I mumbled, but whatever it was, it made him realize she still needs to be locked up in this room. And so he went back out, locked the door again. Another whole bunch of time passed, and I found myself eventually kind of coming back into my body, back into the room. And a short while after, the cook came in, actually, and he opened the door and he says, "Swamiji says you eat food." And he essentially peeled me up off of the ground and brought me into the kitchen and fed me. But I mention this story with this question because in that split second when he looked in my eyes, he was able to see energetically what was going on in me and understood she's going to shatter. Like it's just a matter of a few seconds. She's on the verge of shattering. She needs to be someplace safe for that to happen. Because, of course, it's nothing to be afraid of. It's us. We're not going anywhere other than into the self. But if you had to either hold on to your own narrative of who you think you are, if you had to try to go about the world and interact with people in the way that you've always interacted with them, in the way that they expect you to interact, it's very hard to let yourself shatter. And so he looked at me and in a split second understood this girl needs to be locked into a dark closet for several hours where she can just have this experience. And so he did. At that point, I didn't have a container at 25 that was able to contain it. Today, 27 years later, when I have those sorts of experiences, I no longer need to be locked up in closets because I've got a container that is able to withstand it, flow with it, expand to create space for it. It's no longer about shattering because there's no longer such a stiff sense of who I think I am that is so false. But that's what happens with a lot of us when we have these spiritual experiences. If we are attached to who we think we are, there's a shattering. And that's beautiful. It's exactly what's supposed to happen. But if you don't have either the emotional, psychological work and faith and understanding to allow it, or a safe place, you can certainly end up getting very, very scared, disoriented. And again, there's no reason to be. There is nothing that is going to harm you in any way. It's yourself. It's truth. But it can absolutely be disorienting if you're really attached to who you think you are. And if you haven't had that spiritual work before, or the psychological work to at least understand, hey, there's a place to go inside. So yeah, great question. Other questions? Any question that anyone here has? Yeah, come on up to the mic.
you. My question is, I have just broken up a relationship, and I have noticed a pattern in my life that I tend to lose myself.
To lose yourself.
And then I'm wondering, now I decided that this pattern I am going to break free from, and I am going to go within and do what it takes. So I guess my question is, what is the process, or what do you suggest, or what is the truth that is missing, or what I need to dive into?
Yeah. Beautiful. So, a lot of us go into relationship looking for someone to fill us. We go into relationship feeling like we are somehow missing something, lacking something in some way, and we may not even necessarily be aware of it, but most of us move through the world feeling like we are in some way lacking, in some way missing. In some way lacking, in some way missing something. And we get into relationship, and it seems like that fills us, completes us. So in that relationship, we feel somehow then fuller, more complete, more whole than we did without the relationship. And again, this may be very subconscious. We may not necessarily be aware of it, but all we know is, with this person, I feel so whole. With this person, I feel so complete. And then when we break up, in addition to losing the comfort, the joy, the familiarity, the connection of being with that person, we also lose that sense of wholeness. Because again, there we are back stuck with what feels like halfness or one-quarterness or emptiness. And when you say that you lose yourself, I think a lot of that is what's happening, is that you are allowing someone else to fill that which really needs to be filled by you. That's why relationship is never meant to be half plus half equals one. It's meant to be 1 plus 1 equals 1. In a good relationship, in a healthy relationship, it's 1 plus 1 equals 1, or 1 plus 1 equals 11. But it's never half and half is 1. This is a time for you right now to really ask yourself, what is it that feels like it's missing? The most obvious, of course, are the companionship, the familiarity, the connection. But go deeper. What is it really that is making this so difficult? What part of you feels like it is no longer available or accessible to you? And that's the part to work on. Because what it means is that's the hole inside of you that the relationship is filling. And the dilemma is, even if you never broke up, even if the relationship lasted your entire life, that would still be a karmic lesson left unlearned. All you would have done is figured out a situation in which you didn't actually have to learn that karmic lesson in this lifetime. getting into relationship with someone who fills our metaphoric holes is not the highest karmic way of working with that. Feels good. I had a hole, now it's full. Life is good. But that's not on the deepest level. The deepest level is the awareness that I'm not actually lacking anything. I don't actually have holes. This is just my false way of understanding them. It may be something I've internalized. It may be something I heard directly or indirectly in my youth. Parents, family of origin, teachers. It may have been something that I've internalized through marketing, advertising, constantly telling you that there is something lacking in you so that you will click here and buy now. But usually those really deep holes tend to have come first in our childhood so that we then become susceptible to them later on in life. So really dive in, ask yourself, what do I feel is missing? Like, I imagine you were a really wonderful girlfriend, a really wonderful best friend. So if you are a wonderful best friend, wonderful girlfriend, why can't you be a wonderful girlfriend and best friend to yourself? Like, you got the good end of the deal, right? You're left with yourself. And if you could be this wonderful, amazing, beautiful girlfriend to someone, best friend to someone, well, you're still here. Be that for yourself. And really help yourself understand on a deep level, hey, I'm not lacking. And it doesn't mean that you won't go into relationship again. Relationships are beautiful. But they're most beautiful when they are 1 + 1 coming together in a complementary way, rather than half plus half or quarter and 3/4 coming together in such a way that you feel like you are filling up each other's holes. Because that creates a level of dependency and attachment that isn't healthy, even if the relationship lasts forever. So allow this time to be your time to re-find yourself. You said you had lost yourself. You allowed yourself to get lost in the relationship. Well, there's nothing wrong with merging into love. It's beautiful. Nothing wrong with I becomes we. It's beautiful. It's the power and the beauty of relationship. But it's something that we should be able to hold on to, even if that physical person is no longer there. Because remember, the love that you have is still in you. Your loved one is no longer in this relationship. But your internal love manufacturing plant, that I call it, doesn't have to shut down. You know, the love that we feel when we're in relationship, we tend to attribute it to the other person. As in, oh, God, I feel so much love with you. Well, great. But the love that you feel is inside of you. And here's the best way to understand it. When you are with something that is actually producing something, the farther away you get, the less you feel. You're in front of an air conditioner that's giving you cool air. The farther you walk away, the less cool air you get. You're in front of a heater that's giving you warm air. The farther away from the heater you walk, the less warm air you get. Because it's actually coming from that machine. But when you're in love, your loved one gets in the car and drives to the office, or goes to the grocery store, or you go to the grocery store. You don't feel less love when your loved one is at the grocery store. Meaning, it's not actually coming from them. It's not actually emanating from them the way that cool air comes from an AC or hot air comes from a heater. You are able to access that love even if your loved one is at work, at the grocery store, on a business trip to another state or country. Right? There's no graph of the mile away they walk and the amount of love you feel. Meaning, the love is in you. You're the one who's manufacturing that love inside. The love manufacturing plant is in you. He or she decided for whatever reason in their own karmic journey that they needed to walk away from this relationship. Okay. Not fun, not nice. I wish I had a magic wand to wave over you and make that pain go away. And your love manufacturing plant is still intact. And it's still inside you. Which means that just because they made that decision, it doesn't deprive you of the ability to feel love. So go within and find that factory that's still pumping out love. And instead of having that love be directed toward the person who hurt you right now, let the love be directed to every flower, to every tree, to every animal, to every star, to every sunrise, every sunset. And then direct it within you. And just allow that love to flood your being. And realize that everything that you had, you still have. Other than just the actual companionship with that person. But you haven't lost you. There's nothing of you that isn't there. And this is your opportunity to rediscover the wholeness and fullness of yourself. So that when you enter into relationship again, you do so as a holy, as in H-O-L-Y, rather than, H-O-L-Y, rather than a holy as in filled with holes being. You are holy, H-O-L-Y, you are whole, W-H-O-L-E, not full of holes. Okay? Beautiful. We have to end satsang a little bit early this evening. I have a live call with the United Nations that I have to get on, or rather that I have the opportunity to get on. One of the upsides of the COVID pandemic was that most people, and especially very big institutions, learned how to do things in a hybrid fashion. So even though they are all gathering right now in the Hall of the United Nations, I actually get to be here in Rishikesh and not fly to New York for a 2-hour event. But I do have to go and join them online. But it's been so beautiful to be with you all, and I look so forward to being back again together with you all tomorrow. And so much love to you all.